He needed it, though, didn't he, in the face of this huge damage, not just to Victorian Labor, but the Labor brand more generally. It's a story that we've heard so many times over the history of this political party, this question of stacking, of underhand payments and that sort of thing. It's an ugly story for the Labor Party in Victoria, and a couple of points to make for Daniel Andrews as Premier, and you heard it in those questions. He brought back Somyurek back to his ministry 18 months ago because he thought that he was a different, a changed man. Well, obviously, quite clearly from last night's story, that's not the case. There's that issue. The fact that it was happening in the first place under the nose of his leadership of the Victorian Labor Party. He says, look, fine, he didn't know about the stacking, but he's the leader of the party. He's got to own that as well, in the sense that this is a big hit for the brand of the ALP. And more broadly, federally, this individual is a member of the national executive, the powerful national executive of the ALP. So there are federal implications here too, in terms of what, if any, links there are to federal MPs, to any favours that might be owed and that sort of thing. I think there's a long way to go, not just through the IBAC and Victoria Police investigations, but the political reverberations will continue for some time to come.
I think you're on the money there. We know that Adem Somyurek was sacked the first time, as you mentioned, because of bullying allegations, including allegations from his chief of staff at the time. So it was seen as a strong statement to bring him back at all. But those federal implications, you're right there. These covert recordings were taken in an office, and there's no confirmation yet of whose office that was. But that does go to show that it's a broader issue here, because this could go well beyond Victoria.
Well, as you know, Annalise, when it comes to the major parties in this country, there are all sorts of links between the various levels of the political parties, the patronage involved, the support at various conferences, the Labor conference, around the national executive, who is working with who and that sort of thing. So there are inherent links between every individual of any sort of seniority in a political party and other levels of that party. Now, this morning you heard one individual come out and condemn the behaviour in that report and say that he wanted the person removed from the political party, and that's the federal Labor leader, Anthony Albanese. He's done it before with John Setka, again, very strong in that sense. So I think you can say there's no major link between Albanese and this person. That was quite clear. Who else, though, might have links to Somyurek is the question I think many of us will be looking for today, because anyone linked to this sort of behaviour would be tarnished.
Indeed, and the question now goes to what happens next, because if these allegations of branch stacking are true, that's going to have really wide-reaching implications for people who've been nominated. The branch stacking allegations, look, it's known that in political circles that does happen on a smaller basis, but if it's in a systemic way, and the money as well, that's going to be key. We saw that vision of him withdrawing the cash. What kind of implications do you think it will have for Labor if it's found that that has been taking place on that level?
Well, that's a good point. I think this is something we'll be monitoring very closely between Daniel Andrews and Anthony Albanese. Mr Andrews made it clear that he's already spoken to the federal leader on that issue, that he's not looking to have a review, but he will be making announcements soon on how to avoid that into the future. But sadly, Annalise, we've been here before. We've seen these sorts of scandals before in terms of branch stacking and inappropriate behaviour within party branches and organisations. Let's see if this does lead to some change. I think Anthony Albanese would like to usher that in, but obviously when you're dealing with state jurisdictions as well, it's been a difficult thing to get into place. Let's see if this is a different circumstance after this scandal.